Hi, boys and girls. We're going to talk about silent final E's, job number 1, 2, and 3, because they're a bit tricky. And lots of people are getting tricked and confused. Even moms and dads are getting tricked and confused. So let's talk a little bit about them and why we use different jobs when we use different jobs. So I think the easiest one is job number 1. Lets the vowel say its own name. So it's when you have a vowel in a word and the E jumps over and makes them say its own name. This is the one that we're really used to. So a word like, let's see, time. So the I is saying its own name. And how does the I say its own name? Because silent final E, job number 1, lets the vowel say its own name. So here's the thing. Even if a word looks like it fits job number 2 or job number 3, job number 1 is the most important one. So he always gets the markings. So time, it doesn't fit job number 2 or job number 3. But a word like cave, look at this. We have a vowel saying its own name, saying a, k, a, v. This is job number 1 because it says its own name. But look, it ends with V. And we know English words do not end with V or U. So you might think that cave is actually silent final E, job number 2. Well, you're right. It does fit job number 2 because English words do not end with V or U. But because it's also job number 1, that's the markings that we use. So we would not put these markings on here. We say, yeah, it does do job number 2 too, but job number 1 is the most important. So that's how we would put the markings on this word. Okay, so you need to be careful when you find a word that has a silent final E, job number 1, and another job. We only do the markings for job number 1. So a word like rice, that's not a very nice one. I should use my eraser. So a word like rice, this is a job number 1 because the I is saying I, and it's the silent final E, job number 1, that makes the I say I. Rice. Now look. This ends with a S sound. This phonogram is K, S, says second sound. So it's actually, let C and G say their second sound. This is also doing job number 3 because the C is saying its second sound. S. But remember, because it also has job number 1 is most important. So we do not put the markings like this. Even though it is a job number 3, we don't put the markings like this. We always do the markings for job number 1. Job number 1 is most important. We always do the markings for number 1 if it does number 1. Now let's think of a word that's job number 2, but just job number 2. It doesn't have a long vowel. It doesn't have a vowel saying its own name. So a word like, above. So above, there's other markings in this word, but we're not worried about them right now. Ends with a V. English words do not end with V or U. So we need a silent final E, job number 2. English words do not end with V or U. Does this vowel say its own name? Does it say O? Above? No, it doesn't. So it does not have job number 1. So this one's good. That's how we would do the markings for job number 2. As long as it doesn't have a job number 1, 2, then it's just job number 2. Okay, same thing down here. Let's see if we can think of a word that ends with a C or a G saying its second sound, but it doesn't do job number 1 as well. So if I think of a word like fence, and so let's look. Aha, there's a C, and it's saying k, s, s, second sound. Fence, job number 3, but let's double check. Well, this one isn't saying E. plus there's an extra consonant in here. So as long as there is an extra consonant in there, it never applies. But it's not saying fiets, so it's not job number 1, 2. This is just job number 3. It doesn't have job number 1, so that's how we would write that one as well. Okay, so it's a bit tricky, but if you can remember, job number 1 is the most important job. If a word has a vowel that's saying its own name, doesn't matter what other silent final E jobs it might do, it only gets markings for that first job. So cave, yes, it ends with a V. It does do job number 2, but because it does job number 1, that's the markings we need. Rice, yes, it has a C saying its second sound. So it kind of looks like it would be job number 3, but because it does job number 1, 2, that's the one that we use. So when we're looking for words that are just job number 3 or 2, or just job number 3, you gotta make sure that they don't also have long vowels, that they don't say their own name, because then we don't mark them that way. We mark them with the number 1. All right, make sense? Good luck.